Here are the top stories for today, June 14, 2021. Turn of the troops, around 500 soldiers in Camp Aguinaldo get their first dose of COVID-19 vaccines as part of the government's rollout for the A4 priority sector. Metro Manila mayors agreed to further ease curfew hours in the region to 12 midnight to 4 a.m. starting Tuesday as it shifts to ordinary general community quarantine looms. Sympathies and cries for justice pour in as FEU's football star Keith Absalon and his cousin were laid to rest a week after they were killed in anti-personnel mine blast perpetrated by the New People's Army in Masbate. And another Filipina books a ticket to the Tokyo Olympics. Weightlifter Elreen Ando is the 11th delegate of the country to the much-anticipated sporting event. Good day, I am William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. We start with soldiers rolling out their sleeves as the Armed Forces of the Philippines rolled out COVID-19 vaccination for its members belonging to the A4 category. About 500 troops received Sinovac jabs today in Camp Aguinaldo. All enlisted personnel must register first at their iPass app before they can proceed to the screening process for their vital signs. The A4 category covers uniformed personnel, government employees, and economic frontliners, particularly those who have to leave their homes to work. The Philippine National Police, or PNP, meanwhile will roll out its inoculation of A4 members in Camp Crame tomorrow. In a palace briefing, presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque said the country has so far received over 9.3 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines, with over 6.8 million doses already administered. It's only Monday, but we can surely go ahead and plan our weekend. For those who want to visit and relax, Baguio City sets a 3,000 maximum capacity for tourists. On weekends, several tourists are seen enjoying their boat ride and biking at Burnham Park. Tourism Secretary Bernadette Romulo Puyat encourages local government units to open their borders to tourists. Those who wish to spend time in the cold city may register first through their online app. Meanwhile, Cebu requires negative PCR tests for travelers coming from Bohol and Negros. Governor Gwendolyn Garcia issued Executive Order number 22 regulating the entry of persons from the said provinces due to the rise in COVID-19 cases over there. Under the order, the negative RT-PCR test result must be taken 72 hours upon entry. This requirement is implemented starting today, June 14, until July 24. Curfew hours in Metro Manila is shortened to 4 hours starting tomorrow, June 15. MMDA Chair Benhur Abalos said their decision was based on the decreasing number of COVID-19 cases in the NCR. Curfew hours is now 12 midnight until 4 a.m. from the previous 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. Abalos said 17 mayors already approved of the said decision during their meeting on Sunday. Meanwhile, the Philippine National Police implements heightened tight border control amid the possible easing of quarantine restrictions in the National Capital Region Plus. PNP Chief General Guillermo Lazar said this is to ensure that the virus will no longer spread from one place to another. He said the PNP will abide by the guidelines issued by the national government through the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, or IATF-EID, if there would be changes in border controls. Meanwhile, the Octa Research Group earlier recommends tight border control as the government eases restriction in the NCR Plus area. More interventions are coming from the national government for those who are affected by the pandemic. This includes financial assistance of up to 15,000 pesos through the Livelihood Assistance Grant and assistance to individuals in crisis situation. PCOO Secretary Martin Andanar said they have already streamlined the request for aid needed by local government units for their constituents, particularly in Surigao del Norte. Andanar said the economy in Surigao has been one of the communities that were badly hit by the pandemic, which is why it was chosen as the pilot area for the Aid and Humanitarian Operations Nationwide, or AHON Convergence Program. AHON was consecutively launched in the municipalities of San Benito, Santa Monica, Burgos, and General Luna from June 9 to 10 to help families whose livelihood or source of income was affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Still to come, the Philippine Air Force conducts a Solidarity Maritime Patrol over the Philippine Rise. And the Philippine National Police is on the lookout to curb extortion by communist terrorists ahead of next year's elections. Details ahead. This is the PNA Newsroom. The COVID-19 pandemic has greatly changed our lives for the worse. Lives and jobs were lost and economies reached a meltdown. Thanks to the arrival of safe and effective vaccines, we are one step closer to normalcy. It's time to do our part, get vaccinated for our safety and for our recovery.
If you are there in that community, go there and have yourself vaccinated by any of the vaccines available. They are all potent, they are all effective.
I would like to appeal to all our kababayans, please get vaccinated against COVID-19 and be the government partner in preventing further spread of the disease. I encourage you to get vaccinated as soon as possible time. These vaccines are safe and they are the key to reopening our society. The need for international solidarity and cooperation cannot be made clearer than this pandemic, because everyone is safe. No one is safe globally until everybody is safe.
Vaccines work. The Philippine Air Force conducted a Solidarity Maritime Patrol over the Philippine Rise on Saturday as part of the country's commemoration of the 123rd Independence Day. It also coincides with the 5th anniversary of the renaming of the Philippine Rise. An Air Force transport aircraft and 2 South Korean-made fighter jets took part in the activity, which was organized by the Philippine Air Force and its Tactical Operations Wing, Northern Luzon. Aboard the transport aircraft was National Security Advisor Hermogenes Esperon, Northern Luzon Command Chief Lieutenant General Arnulfo Burgos, and another ranking officials. Esperon was the guest of honor during the Independence Day ceremonies at Clark Air Base in Angeles City, Pampanga. PAF spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Maynard Mariano said escort mission such as in maritime patrols builds confidence and assures the Filipino people that the Philippine Air Force will always be there to keep our airspace inviolable and safe for all of us. The Philippine National Police strengthens its efforts against the possible retaliation of the Abu Sayyaf group. It is also on alert versus the extortion campaign of the CPP-NPA. The details from Marita Mawahid.
The Philippine National Police has ordered concerned police officers and units to be on alert against retaliatory attacks by the Abu Sayyaf group after an ASG leader and 3 members died in an encounter with government troops in Hulosulu on Sunday. State security forces were about to serve a warrant of arrest when Abu Sayyaf terrorists fired at them, prompting the police and the military to retaliate. Among those killed were Al-Sawadjaan, ASG sub-leader Injam Yada, a certain Abu Raup, and a still unidentified ASG member. Yada was involved in kidnapping incidents while Sawadjaan had knowledge of bomb making. His brother Mundi was the alleged mastermind of the twin blasts in Hulo last year. PNP Chief General Guillermo Alyazar assured that the police and military will further intensify joint operations to capture Mundi and the remaining bandits. Meanwhile, Alyazar directed the police to work closely with the military in preventing communist terrorists from collecting permit-to-campaign fees. He also warned politicians planning to run for posts in the 2022 elections against giving permit-to-campaign fees to the CPP-NPA. He said the money collected by the communist rebels will definitely be used in the purchase of more firearms to sustain their senseless and pointless armed struggle. Moreover, the PNP continues to coordinate with foreign drug enforcement agencies to strengthen border control against illegal drugs. Alyazar said concerned police units, including the Maritime Group, have been tasked to heighten border security measures to prevent the entry of illegal drugs. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Marita Muaje.
A gentle reminder for those who are already using their PhilSys national ID. Business entities may request for authentication of a PhilSys registered person's identity during transactions, but with the consent of their registrant. The Philippine Statistics Authority, or PSA, said transacting entities usually verify the authenticity of identification documents like the PhilID online or offline. For online authentication, one will need the PhilSys number or PSN with biometric information, demographic information, or all of the above. In cases where the PSN cannot be provided, the biometric and demographic information will be verified. For offline authentication, the PhilID card and data stored in the QR code must match. This is part of the protection and security of the personal data in the PhilID. Media practitioners performed a cleansing ritual on Saturday, June 12 at the Tamawan village in Baguio City. Over 30 practicing media who do their daily round of the city and the Cordillera Administrative Region to gather news were present in the Igorot ritual called Senga, done by the Mambunong or native priest. They offered animals to the native god Kabunyan for protection, thanksgiving, and healing, and to ward off sickness, anxiety, and worry. The ritual was done days after several media members were infected with COVID-19, one of which died due to its complications. Alwin Quitasol, president of the Baguio Correspondents and Broadcasters Club, said the ritual is meant to ask for thanksgiving, healing, and protection for those left behind. He said the ritual was needed to free the mind and heart from anxiety, worry, and negativity, and strengthen their minds to move on. Up next, the cry for justice continues. The Absalon cousins killed in the mine blast in Masbate are laid to rest. And another Filipina weightlifter adds up to the list of the country's delegates to the Tokyo Olympics. Back after a quick break, stay with the PNA Newsroom. You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. Far Eastern University football player Keith Absalon and his cousin Nolven were laid to rest on Sunday, a week after they were killed by anti-personnel mines planted by New People's Army rebels in Masbate City. Thousands of Masbateños, together with the families and loved ones of the victims, joined the necrological service at the Masbate Baptist Church and the funeral procession in Barangay Kalipay. Pastor William Sahagon, who presided the Mass, echoed calls for justice for Keith and Nolven while urging everyone to entrust the investigation to the authorities. The victims were riding their bicycles when the APMS exploded in Purok 4, Barangay Anas Village on the morning of June 6. Nolven's 16-year-old son was also injured. The Police Regional Office 5 meanwhile confirmed that the victims bore gunshot wounds aside from blast injuries. PRO 5 Director Brigadier General Jonel Estomo said the result showed how 2 innocent civilians suffered at the hands of the NPA. A top military official has lauded an organization of former rebels for its support to the government's peace and development programs. Lieutenant Colonel Leandro Rubio, commander of the Sinagtala 91st Infantry Battalion, said the support of the Sentrong Alyansa ng Mamamayan para sa Bayan or Sambayanan is vital in the government's efforts to end the insurgency. Sambayanan is composed of former key members of the New People's Army who abandoned their allegiance to the underground communist movement. Some 52 former rebels and exploited local populace attended in the launching of Sambayanan's Aurora chapter on Saturday. Colonel Julio Lizardo, Provincial Director of the Aurora Police Provincial Office, said the PNP supports Sambayanan in its aim to back the National Task Force to end local communist armed conflict in implementing an efficient mechanism and structure for the whole-of-nation approach against insurgency. The Mines and Geosciences Bureau has declared Barangay Igmasandig in the town of Valderrama in Antique unsafe for dwelling, saying it is very highly susceptible to landslides. Geologists from MGB Western Visayas have recommended not to allow residents previously evacuated from there to return to their homes. The monsoon rain softened the area that resulted in soil depression and has caused cracks and damages to the barangay hall, plaza, and houses. The 4.8 magnitude earthquake with Valderrama as epicenter last June 7 also worsened its condition. Valderrama Mayor Mary Joyce Roquero said evacuated families will have to remain in the center located at the town proper. Barangay Igmasandig has been declared under a state of calamity since Saturday. Moving on to world news, the Parliament of Israel has moved to launch a coalition government and ousted its Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Israel's parliament, the Knesset, voted on Sunday to approve the new government 60-59 with 1 abstention. Netanyahu's rule ended after 12 years through a loose coalition of Netanyahu's rivals. Taking Netanyahu's place is far-right advocate and former defense minister Naftali Bennett. He is in a power-sharing agreement with opposition leader Yair Lapid, who will next sit as prime minister after 2 years. United States President Joe Biden has extended his congratulations to Bennett. Meanwhile, Netanyahu vowed to get back at the coalition, calling it a weak and dangerous government. In sports, the International Weightlifting Federation announced on Saturday that Elreen Ando has qualified for the Tokyo Olympics. Ando booked through the continental quota given to the best weightlifters from each continent, but who are outside the top 8 of the world rankings. Ando, now ranked 12 in the world, is the highest placed Asian to make the cut for the women's under 64 kilogram division. She will join world number 2 in the women's under 55 kilograms, Heidelin Diaz, who snatched a silver in the 2016 Rio de Janeiro Games. The International Olympic Committee said that the Tokyo Olympics would go on as planned starting on July 23rd. Trece was the talk of the town over the weekend as the Filipino anime shot up to #1 of the Netflix Philippines chart. Filipinos have tuned into the streaming service to binge on the series since it premiered on June 11. Before these, 13 was met with much hype anchored by a massive marketing push from Netflix and word on social media. Aside from Netflix Philippines, the series also made it to the top 10 chart in Canada and UAE. 13 is a comic book series by Budjetan and Cajo Baldissimo, first published in the year 2005. The story revolves around Alexandra 13, a detective who deals with supernatural crimes involving icons from Filipino mythology. The titular character is voiced by Liza Soberano in the Filipino dub. Here's another look at today's biggest stories. Turn of the troops, around 500 soldiers in Camp Aguinaldo get their first dose of COVID-19 vaccines as part of the government's rollout for the A4 priority sector. Metro Manila mayors agreed to further ease curfew hours in the region to 12 midnight to 4 a.m. starting Tuesday as it shifts to ordinary general community quarantine looms. Sympathies and cries for justice pour in as FEU's football star Keith Absalon and his cousin were laid to rest a week after they were killed in anti-personnel mine blast perpetrated by the New People's Army in Masbate. And another Filipina books a ticket to the Tokyo Olympics. Weightlifter Elreen Ando is the 11th delegate of the country to the much-anticipated sporting event. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head onto the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day.